Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something a little different. We're not just talking about bizarre rulers, we're becoming them. The megalomaniacs, the obsessives, the certifiably insane monarchs who turned absolute power into absolute weirdness. Kings who thought they were made of glass, emperors who appointed horses to government positions, and sultans who turned their harems into competitive eating contests. The kind of historical figures that make you grateful you live in a boring democracy where the worst thing your leader does is send weird tweets. So before we slip into the minds of history's most unhinged royalty, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy watching me psychoanalyze dead people with serious mental health issues. And let me know in the comments which of these royal weirdos you think you could have survived serving under, though spoiler alert. The answer is probably none of them. It's always fascinating to see who's brave enough to join us for these deep dives into historical insanity. Now, dim the lights. Maybe grab something caffeinated because we're covering 15 different flavors of royal madness. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Fair warning, by the end of this, you'll either have a new appreciation for modern democracy or a disturbing understanding of how absolute power corrupts absolutely everything, including basic human decency and personal hygiene habits. So, you think you could handle being a medieval king? Sweet, innocent child. Like a goldfish thinking it could run NASA. You wake up in ancient Egypt, and congratulations, you're Akhenaten, the pharaoh who decided that thousands of years of perfectly functional polytheism needed a complete overhaul. Your morning routine, not checking the Nile's flood levels or counting tribute from conquered territories. No, you're staring at the sun, literally, for hours. Because you've convinced yourself that Aten, the sun disk, is the only god worth worshipping, and apparently, the best way to show devotion is developing permanent eye damage. Your advisors are shuffling nervously in the corner, probably wondering when you'll snap out of this phase and go back to normal pharaoh activities like building monuments to yourself. But you're not having it. You've moved the entire capital from Thebes to a city you built from scratch in the middle of nowhere, Amarna, because the old capital had too many temples to other gods. Too distracting. Can't focus on your son, staring with all those pesky deities cluttering up the landscape. The priests are furious. The people are confused. Your wife Nefertiti is probably reconsidering her marriage choices. But none of that matters because you've discovered the secret of the universe, and it's a glowing ball of fire in the sky. Revolutionary stuff. You spend your days composing hymns to Aten, and they're actually quite beautiful, poetic even. Too bad everyone thinks you've lost your mind. Your art style has changed too. Gone are the idealized, godlike pharaoh portraits. Now you're depicted with an elongated skull, feminine hips, and a pot belly. Some say it's a medical condition. Others think you're trying to represent both male and female aspects of divinity. Really, you just think honesty in art is refreshing. If you're going to be worshipped as a god, at least let people know what they're getting into. The military campaigns are suffering because you're too busy contemplating solar radiation to bother with boring things like maintaining the empire. Letters from vassal states pile up unread while you practice your sun salutations. Who needs Nubian gold when you have enlightenment? Your legacy will be erased within decades of your death. Your city abandoned, your religious revolution reversed. But right now, in this moment, squinting at the blazing sun until your retina scream for mercy, you've never felt more alive. Now you're Henry V, and your morning doesn't start with prayer or reviewing state documents. It starts with a rigorous examination of your bodily functions. Every single one. You have a groom of the stool, whose entire job description is monitoring your bowel movements with the dedication of a Renaissance scientist. The consistency, the frequency, the colour, all carefully recorded because apparently the health of England depends on the regularity of your digestive system. Your leg is rotting. The wound from that jousting accident years ago has turned into a festering, putrid mess that makes everyone in the room nauseous. But you refuse to let the physicians properly treat it because you're convinced that draining the pus would drain your royal essence. So instead, you have servants whose full-time job is changing the bandages and pretending the smell doesn't make them want to flee the country. The wives. Oh, the wives. You've turned marriage into an extreme sport. Anne Boleyn lost her head because she couldn't produce a male heir fast enough for your liking. Catherine Howard got the axe because she had a past. Catherine of Aragon got divorced because you needed a new model. You're currently on wife number 4, Anne of Cleves, and you've already nicknamed her the Flanders Mirror, because apparently your diplomatic skills are as refined as your toilet habits. Your paranoia has reached artistic levels. You have food tasters for your food tasters. Every meal is a potential assassination attempt. Every smile from a courier is potential treason. You've executed more friends than most kings execute enemies. Thomas More, dead. Thomas Cromwell, dead. Anyone named Thomas really should probably avoid your court. But the strangest part is your obsession with theological debates. You spend hours arguing with scholars about the minutiae of Protestant doctrine, writing pamphlets, personally overseeing the translation of religious texts. You've broken with Rome, declared yourself head of the Church of England, and dissolved every monastery in the kingdom, all because the Pope wouldn't let you divorce your first wife. You've essentially created a new religion because you couldn't keep it in your doublet. And somehow, this will be remembered as a defining moment in English history. Your rotting leg and your matrimonial body count will establish the foundation of the British Empire. History has a twisted sense of humour. The deer heads are watching you. They're mounted on every wall of every room in every palace you own. Their glassy eyes following your movement with an intensity that would unnerve anyone who hasn't spent the last decade systematically hunting every large mammal in the Holy Roman Empire. But you're Rudolph too, and you've moved far beyond mere hunting. You've turned killing animals into an art form, a science, a religious experience. Your day begins before dawn not with matters of state or diplomatic correspondence, but with detailed discussions about wind patterns and deer migration routes with your huntmaster. You have maps of every forest in Bohemia marked with the estimated populations of various game animals. You know the breeding patterns of elk better than you know the political situation in Hungary. Your courtiers have learned to schedule meetings around rutting season, but the hunting is just the beginning. Back in Prague Castle, you've created what can only be described as a cabinet of curiosities on steroids. Rooms filled with astronomical instruments, alchemical equipment, exotic animals, and enough occult paraphernalia to make the Inquisition nervous. You employ astronomers, astrologers, mathematicians, and mystics, often in the same person. Tycho Brahe is mapping the heavens from your observatory, while John Dee is trying to contact angels through crystal balls in your basement. Your collection of art is obsessive, not just paintings and sculptures, but mechanical devices, automatons, curiosities from the New World. You have a rhinoceros horn that you're convinced can detect poison, a bizarre stone that supposedly cures all diseases, and a piece of unicorn horn that cost more than most nobles' annual income. Your treasures are catalogued with Germanic precision, each item documented, cross-referenced, and arranged according to an organizational system that makes sense only to you. The alchemy lab is where you spend most of your time these days. You're convinced that somewhere in those bubbling retorts and smoking furnaces lies the secret to transmuting base metals into gold, discovering the elixir of life, and unlocking the fundamental mysteries of creation. Your hands are permanently stained with chemical residue, your clothes smell like sulfur and mercury, and your advisors are genuinely concerned that you're going to accidentally poison yourself. Prague has become a magnet for every charlatan, genius, and madman in Europe. Rudolph's court is where brilliant minds come to push the boundaries of human knowledge, and where clever fraudsters come to separate a gullible emperor from his gold. You can't tell the difference anymore, and frankly, you don't care. The pursuit of hidden knowledge has become more important than the mundane business of ruling an empire. The 30 Years' War is brewing, Protestant and Catholic forces are mobilizing, and you're in your laboratory trying to create a homunculus in a jar. You are Caligula, and the morning starts with your horse Incitatus receiving his daily grooming. Not unusual for a beloved animal, except your horse lives in a marble stable, sleeps on ivory bedding, and has his own staff of servants. You've been seriously considering appointing him to the Senate, not as a joke, but because you genuinely believe your horse has better judgment than most Roman politicians. Looking at the current Senate, you might be right. The God thing started as performance art, but somewhere along the way, you began believing your own publicity. You now insist on being worshipped as a living deity, complete with temples, sacrifices, and priests. Romans who've conquered half the known world are now required to prostrate themselves before a 20. Something who thinks his horse would make a good consul. The cognitive dissonance is staggering, but you're beyond caring about public opinion. Your building projects have moved beyond ambitious into the realm of physics, defying. You've ordered the construction of a temporary, floating bridge across the Bay of Naples, not for any strategic purpose, but because you want to ride your horse across it while wearing the breastplate of Alexander the Great. 3 miles of ships lashed together, just so you can prove that the sea cannot stop a god. The engineering feat is actually impressive. The reason for it is completely insane. The executions have become entertainment, not just for you, but apparently for the crowds who gather to watch your increasingly creative methods of disposing of people who annoy you. A senator makes a sarcastic comment about your horse, fed to the lions. A merchant shortchanges the imperial treasury, crucified upside down. Someone laughs at the wrong moment during a theatrical performance. Their entire family joins them in the afterlife. You've turned paranoia into public spectacle. But the truly bizarre part is your relationship with your sisters. The rumors about incest are probably true, but that's not the weird part. The weird part is that you've elevated them to goddess status, built temples in their honor, and require citizens to swear oaths by their names. You've essentially created a divine imperial family cult, with yourself as the primary deity and your siblings as the supporting pantheon. Your plans for military conquest have become increasingly absurd. You've declared war on Neptune and ordered your legions to march to the English Channel and collect seashells as spoils of war. Imagine being a battle-hardened Roman legionnaire, veteran of campaigns in Gaul and Germania, being ordered to wage war against the ocean. You've distributed the shells to your soldiers as if they were treasure looted from a conquered city. The greatest military machine in the ancient world, reduced to beachcombing because their emperor has issues with sea gods. The palace has become a theatre where you're the only actor, the only audience, and the only critic. Every day is a performance, every decision is dramatic, and every person in your presence is either a prop or a potential victim. You've turned the Roman Empire into your personal stage, and everyone else is just waiting for the curtain to fall. Welcome to medieval France, where you are Charles VI, and your grip on reality is about as stable as a house built on quicksand during an earthquake. This morning, like many mornings, you have no idea who you are. The courtiers are calling you, Your Majesty, and Sire, but you're pretty sure you're made of glass. Crystal glass, specifically, and everyone needs to be very, very careful around you because if you break, the kingdom will shatter into a million pieces. Your attendants have learned to approach you with the caution typically reserved for handling unstable explosives. They speak in whispers, move slowly, and wear soft, soled shoes because sudden noises might cause you to crack. You've insisted on wearing specially padded clothing to protect yourself from accidental impacts. Iron rods have been sewn into your doublet to provide structural support for your delicate glass body. The sight of the King of France, armoured against his own fragility, would be tragic if it weren't so absolutely bizarre. The episodes come without warning. One moment you're reviewing tax assessments and diplomatic correspondence, functioning as a reasonably competent medieval monarch. The next moment, you're convinced that your body is made of fragile crystal and that your enemies have replaced your real flesh with glass to make you vulnerable. Your advisors have learned to recognize the signs the way your eyes unfocus, how your speech becomes disconnected, the gradual transition from royal authority to confused terror. During the bad periods, you refuse to let anyone touch you. Handshakes could shatter your fingers. Embraces might crack your ribs. Even sitting down becomes a calculated risk. You've had special chairs constructed with extra cushioning, and your servants must help you into bed, using an elaborate system of pulleys and soft supports. The most powerful man in France, afraid of his own shadow because shadows might cause stress fractures. The court physicians are baffled. They've tried bloodletting, herbal remedies, exorcisms, and consultations with every medical authority from Paris to Constantinople. None of them have encountered a king who believes he's made of glass. Your condition is so unprecedented that future historians will struggle to categorize it. Schizophrenia won't be properly understood for centuries. So for now, everyone just assumes you're cursed, possessed, or the victim of foreign sorcery. Your periods of lucidity are almost worse than the madness. During clear moments, you're acutely aware of what you've become, how your condition is affecting the kingdom, how the nobility are maneuvering for power while you're incapacitated. You see the pity in their eyes, the careful way they speak around you, the plans they make assuming you won't recover. The knowledge that you're losing your mind, bit by bit, is perhaps the cruelest aspect of your illness. The kingdom is falling apart while you worry about breaking. The 100 Years' War is raging. English forces are occupying French territory, and your nobles are more interested in their own power struggles than national defense. But you can't focus on military strategy when every step might cause hairline fractures in your legs. France needs a strong king, and instead, they have a man who thinks he's a piece of delicate glassware. You are King John of England, and your morning routine involves checking your fingernails for signs of poison, tasting your breakfast 3 times before eating it, and having your chamberlain verify that your crown hasn't been replaced with a cursed replica overnight. Paranoia isn't just a personality trait for you. It's a survival strategy in a world where everyone from your own barons to the King of France wants you dead, deposed, or both. The Magna Carta wasn't a negotiation. It was a humiliation. Your own nobles cornered you at Runnymede and essentially held a sword to your throat until you agreed to limit your own power. No king in English history has been forced to sign away royal authority like a commoner settling a debt. The document sits in your treasury like a constant reminder that your subjects think you're incompetent, tyrannical, or both. They're probably right, but that doesn't make it sting any less. Your nickname says everything, John Lackland, because your father Henry II didn't think you were competent enough to inherit significant territory. Your older brother Richard got the crown, the glory, and the crusader reputation. You got the leftovers and the resentment. Even after becoming king, the name stuck. It's hard to maintain royal dignity when your own subjects call you the king who lacks land. In a kingdom where land equals power equals legitimacy, the French situation is a disaster of epic proportions. Philip Augustus has systematically conquered every major English possession in France. Normandy, Anjou, Poitou, all lost through a combination of military incompetence and diplomatic blundering that would be impressive if it weren't so catastrophic. Your ancestors spent centuries building the Angevin Empire, and you've managed to lose most of it in less than a decade. Future historians will call you soft-sword, and they won't mean it as a compliment. But the truly bizarre part is your relationship with the Church. You've managed to get into a fight with Pope Innocent III, one of the most powerful men in medieval Europe, over who gets to appoint the Archbishop of Canterbury. The Pope has placed all of England under interdict, meaning no church services, no Christian burials, no sacraments. Your subjects can't get married, baptized, or receive last rites because you're too stubborn to compromise with Rome. The entire spiritual life of the kingdom has been suspended because of your ego. Your response to the interdict was to confiscate church property and revenue, essentially turning yourself into England's first Protestant monarch, 6 centuries before the Reformation. You're funding the royal treasury by looting monasteries and charging fees for basic religious services. It's brilliant, profitable, and completely insane. You've managed to alienate both your nobles and your clergy simultaneously, a feat that requires exceptional political incompetence. The Welsh campaigns are not going well. Every time you march west with a royal army, the Welsh disappear into their mountains like morning mist. You burn a few villages, declare victory, march home, and within months, they're raiding English territory again. It's like playing chess with an opponent who refuses to follow the rules and keeps moving the board. Your military reputation is becoming a joke, and jokes about royal competence have a way of becoming rebellions. Your treasure is depleted, your nobles are in revolt, your lands in France are conquered. Your people are under religious sanctions, and your military campaigns consistently fail. Yet somehow, you keep making the same mistakes, trusting the same unreliable advisors, and expecting different results. The definition of insanity, applied to medieval kingship: the morning light filters through the windows of Versailles, and you are Louis XIV, the Sun King, waking up to the most elaborate morning routine in human history. Your lever, the formal rising ceremony, involves 47 different courtiers, each with a specific role in the complex choreography of getting you dressed. The Grand Chamberlain hands you your shirt, but only after the Duke of Orleans has removed your nightcap, and the captain of the guards has tested your chocolate for poison. Your daily schedule is so rigid that courtiers can set their watches by your bowel movements. Every action, from breakfast to bedtime, is planned, timed, and performed with the precision of a military operation. You've turned your entire existence into a public performance, where even the most intimate moments become state ceremonies. Going to the bathroom requires an entourage. Getting dressed involves a complicated hierarchy of who gets to hand you which article of clothing, and in what order. Versailles isn't just a palace, it's a machine designed to generate royal glory. Every room, every garden path, every fountain has been calculated to reinforce the idea that you are the center of the universe. The Hall of Mirrors isn't just decoration, it's a statement that reality itself should reflect your magnificence. You've spent the equivalent of several modern nations' GDP creating a monument to your own ego, and somehow it works. The court rituals have become more important than actual governance. Nobles who once wielded real power in their provinces now compete for the privilege of watching you eat breakfast. The Duchess of Burgundy considers it a good day if she gets to hold your napkin. The Duke of St. Simon spends more energy analyzing seating arrangements at royal dinners than military strategy. You've weaponized etiquette, turning social protocol into a system of political control. Your brother Philip is running around the palace in dresses, makeup, and jewelry that would make Marie Antoinette jealous. Monsieur, as he's known at court, has transformed gender, bending into high art. He leads the French army to victory over the Dutch while wearing high heels and rouge. His marriage to Elizabeth Charlotte of the Palatinate produces children, but everyone knows his real passion is for handsome young men and fabulous outfits. Somehow this works in your court, where spectacle trumps conventional morality. The building projects have moved beyond architecture into the realm of landscape domination. You're not just constructing palaces, you're reshaping the geography of France to match your aesthetic vision. Rivers are diverted, hills are leveled, forests are replanted according to geometric patterns that can only be properly appreciated from the royal apartments. Nature itself must conform to royal taste. Your wars are fought as much for glory as for territory. The War of Spanish Succession, the Dutch War, the War of the League of Augsburg. Europe keeps forming coalitions against you, not because you're necessarily more aggressive than other monarchs, but because your success makes everyone else feel inadequate. You've turned international relations into a competition for magnificence, and other kings are losing badly. The sun metaphor isn't just flattery, it's become your genuine self-image. You believe that France, Europe, indeed the entire world, revolves around you. Every sunrise is a personal tribute, every sunset a temporary withdrawal of your favor from the world. You've convinced yourself that you are the source of light, warmth, and life for your subjects. The scary part is that your subjects seem to believe it too. You are Ibrahim I, Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. And this morning starts like every morning with your harem attendants bringing you detailed reports about the weight gain of your concubines. Not their health, not their happiness, their weight. You've developed an obsession with obesity that borders on the pathological. Thin women are removed from the imperial harem, while those who achieve truly impressive corpulence are rewarded with jewels, silks, and increased access to your royal presence. The palace kitchens have been transformed into what can only be described as an industrial feeding operation. Your concubines are provided with a diet designed to maximize weight gain: honeyed pastries, candied fruits, fatty meats, and dairy products in quantities that would challenge competitive eaters. You've essentially turned the imperial harem into a bizarre combination of bordello and force-feeding facility. The goal isn't pleasure or companionship. It's the creation of women so obese they can barely move. Your favorite concubine, who reportedly weighs over 300 pounds, requires a team of servants to help her walk from room to room. You've had special furniture constructed to accommodate her size, reinforced beds that can support extraordinary weight, and costumes designed to showcase rather than conceal her bulk. What most people would consider a medical emergency, you've turned into an aesthetic ideal. The financial cost of maintaining your weight, obsessed harem, is staggering. The imperial treasury is hemorrhaging gold to pay for the massive quantities of food required to keep hundreds of women at their target weights. Your Grand Vizier has attempted to explain that the empire is facing military threats from Persia and Austria, but you're more interested in discussing optimized fattening techniques with the harem's nutritionist. Your own eating habits have become equally excessive. Royal banquets now last for hours with course after course of rich, fatty foods. You've gained so much weight that your ceremonial armor no longer fits, and your horse has been replaced with a reinforced sedan chair carried by 8 men. The Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, one of the most powerful rulers on earth, transported like an oversized piece of furniture because walking has become too strenuous. The religious establishment is horrified. Islamic dietary laws emphasize moderation and restraint, but you've turned gluttony into a royal prerogative. The palace imam has attempted to discuss the spiritual implications of your lifestyle, but you've countered by commissioning theological treatises, arguing that divine abundance should be reflected in physical abundance. You've essentially created a theology of obesity. Your military commanders are increasingly concerned about your fitness for leadership. The Ottoman Empire is engaged in conflicts on multiple fronts, but you're too physically compromised to personally lead campaigns, inspect fortifications, or even attend lengthy strategy meetings. The empire that once conquered Constantinople and besieged Vienna is now led by a sultan who gets winded climbing stairs. The strangest part is that you seem genuinely convinced that your obesity obsession represents the height of sophistication and refinement. You've confused excess with excellence, size with significance. In your mind, the ability to maintain hundreds of enormously fat concubines demonstrates imperial power and aesthetic sophistication. You've turned one of history's great empires into a monument to your feeding fetish. Dawn breaks over 18th century Russia, and you are Empress Elizabeth, daughter of Peter the Great, and your morning begins with your servants laying out today's outfit selection. Not outfit, selection. 15,000 dresses hang in your wardrobes, along with thousands of shoes, accessories and wigs. You haven't worn the same ensemble twice in 20 years, and you have no intention of starting now. Fashion isn't just a hobby for you, it's a full-time obsession that employs hundreds of seamstresses, jewelers, and decorators. Your dressing routine takes 3 hours on a normal day, longer if you're attending a state function. Every garment must be perfect, every accessory precisely matched, every detail scrutinized by your team of fashion advisors. You've essentially turned getting dressed into a theatrical production, complete with costume changes, dramatic reveals, and supporting cast members whose entire careers depend on their ability to coordinate silk with satin. The Imperial Treasury considers your wardrobe a significant budget line item. The cost of maintaining your fashion collection exceeds the annual military budget of most European nations. You've commissioned clothing from Paris, Venice, Constantinople, and London. Your seamstresses work in shifts around the clock, creating new gowns, modifying existing pieces, and developing innovative techniques for incorporating precious metals and gemstones into fabric. But clothing is just the beginning. Your cosmetics routine involves dozens of preparations: face powders, rouge, lip colors, eye treatments, perfumes, and hair tonics. You've imported makeup artists from France and Italy, each specializing in different aspects of imperial beautification. Your morning transformation from ordinary human being to divine empress requires the coordinated effort of a small army of beauty professionals. The court has adapted to your fashion obsessions. Nobles now compete not just for political influence, but for sartorial significance. Who can afford the most elaborate outfit? Whose ensemble most successfully complements the imperial style? Court functions have become fashion shows, with your appearance as the climactic finale. Diplomats report back to their home countries, not just about Russian foreign policy, but about the Empress's dress choices. Your mirror collection is legendary. Hundreds of mirrors in every room of every palace, positioned to allow constant monitoring of your appearance from every possible angle. You've created a world where your reflection is omnipresent, where every step is accompanied by visual confirmation of your magnificence. The Hall of Mirrors at Versailles has nothing on your obsession with seeing yourself. The seasonal wardrobe changes require military-level logistics. Moving your clothes between summer and winter palaces involves dozens of carriages, hundreds of servants, and complex inventory systems to ensure that nothing is lost or damaged in transit. You've essentially created a mobile fashion empire that travels with you wherever you go. Foreign ambassadors spend more time describing your outfits than your policies in their diplomatic correspondence. The Empress Elizabeth's fashion choices have become a form of international communication, a way of projecting Russian power and sophistication to the rest of Europe. What you wear to state dinners sends political messages that are analyzed and interpreted by intelligence services across the continent. Your legacy will include military victories, territorial expansion, and cultural achievements. But history will remember you primarily as the empress who elevated personal style to the level of state policy. You've demonstrated that absolute power includes the absolute right to dress fabulously, regardless of cost, practicality, or the opinions of people who think 3,000 dresses might be excessive. The Forbidden City awakens to another day of your reign, and you are the Kangxi Emperor, but your morning doesn't begin with state affairs or military briefings. It begins with your daily consultation with the Imperial Astronomical Bureau about the precise mathematical relationship between celestial movements and optimal times for different activities. Not astrology, mathematics. You've turned the governance of the world's largest empire into an exercise in applied mathematics and scientific precision. Your study is filled with European scientific instruments, telescopes, mechanical clocks, barometers, and mathematical calculating devices imported from Jesuit missionaries. You've learned Latin, studied Euclidean geometry, and can perform complex calculations in your head that would challenge university-trained mathematicians. The Son of Heaven has become the Empire's chief scientist, and your court scholars are struggling to keep up with your intellectual curiosity. Every decision, from military campaigns to tax policy, is now subjected to mathematical analysis. You've established bureaus for calculating optimal farming schedules based on astronomical observations, determining the most efficient routes for the Grand Canal system using geometric principles, and designing fortifications according to the latest European military engineering techniques. The mandate of heaven, it turns out, requires a solid understanding of applied physics. Your map collection is obsessive, not just maps of China, but detailed cartographic representations of the entire known world, compiled from Chinese explorers, European missionaries, and captured foreign documents. You know the geography of Europe better than most European kings, understand the trade routes of the Indian Ocean, and have commissioned expeditions to map regions that most people don't know exist. Knowledge of the physical world has become a form of power. The Jesuit missionaries have become your unofficial science tutors, teaching you European mathematics, astronomy, and natural philosophy in exchange for religious tolerance and access to Chinese markets. You've created a unique synthesis of Confucian administrative principles and European scientific methods. The result is a government that operates with mathematical precision, an empirical methodology that won't become common in Europe for another century. Your military campaigns are planned like engineering projects, with detailed calculations of supply requirements, troop movements, and logistical support systems. The conquest of Taiwan wasn't just a military victory, it was a demonstration of applied mathematics in military planning. You calculated the exact number of ships, soldiers, and supplies needed for success, then executed the plan with geometric precision. The palace workshops have been converted into research laboratories, where court artisans work alongside European trained scientists to develop new technologies, improved firearms, better printing techniques, more accurate timepieces, and innovative agricultural tools. You've turned the imperial court into China's first research university, with yourself as the head professor and the empire as your laboratory. Your daily schedule is calculated to optimize efficiency and learning. Specific times for reviewing military reports, studying scientific texts, consulting with provincial governors, and examining new technological innovations. You've applied time and motion studies to imperial administration, creating a government that operates with clockwork precision. The strangest part is that it works. Your mathematically governed empire is experiencing unprecedented prosperity, territorial expansion, and cultural achievement. You've demonstrated that scientific methodology can be successfully applied to political administration, that empirical observation and mathematical calculation can improve governmental effectiveness. The Enlightenment principles that European philosophers are just beginning to articulate, you've been implementing for decades. Morning in medieval Bohemia, and you are Wenceslas IV, Holy Roman Emperor, but your day doesn't start with imperial business. It starts in the royal kitchens, where you're personally supervising the preparation of elaborate meals that you'll never eat. Not because you're not hungry, but because you've developed an obsession with cooking that has completely replaced your interest in governing. The most powerful man in Central Europe spends his days debating seasoning techniques with kitchen staff. Your cookbook collection rivals the imperial library. Recipes from across Europe, the Byzantine Empire, and the Islamic world fill dozens of volumes that you study with the intensity most rulers reserve for military strategy. You know the precise cooking time for every type of meat, the optimal temperature for different bread doughs, and can identify spices by smell with the accuracy of a professional chef. Your courtiers have learned to discuss policy matters in culinary metaphors because it's the only way to hold your attention. The palace kitchens have been expanded into what can only be described as a medieval culinary research facility. Multiple ovens, specialized cooking equipment, and ingredient storage systems that would be impressive in a modern restaurant. You've imported cooks from Italy, France, and Constantinople not to prepare your meals, but to teach you their techniques. The Holy Roman Emperor taking cooking lessons like an apprentice. Your diplomatic dinners have become legendary, not for the political negotiations, but for the extraordinary cuisine. You personally plan every menu, supervise the preparation of every course, and often cook key dishes yourself. Foreign ambassadors report that they've never experienced such sophisticated food, but they also note that the emperor seems more interested in discussing cooking techniques than trade agreements or military alliances. The strange part is that you rarely actually eat the food you prepare. Hours spent creating elaborate dishes that are then served to your guests while you watch their reactions with the intensity of an artist studying critics' responses to his work. You've turned cooking into performance art, with yourself as both creator and audience. The satisfaction comes from the creative process, not the consumption. Your hunting expeditions have been transformed into ingredient gathering missions. Instead of pursuing deer and boar for sport, you're collecting wild herbs, hunting specific animals whose meat has particular flavor characteristics, and sourcing rare ingredients for experimental recipes. Your hunters have become foragers, and your royal forest has become your personal grocery store. The empire is suffering from your culinary obsessions. Provincial governors send urgent reports about military threats, territorial disputes, and economic problems, but your responses are delayed because you're busy perfecting a new sauce recipe. The Golden Bull, the constitutional foundation of the Holy Roman Empire, sits unread on your desk while you experiment with different pasta-making techniques. Your nobles have learned to present policy proposals in the form of menu suggestions. Want to discuss tax policy? Frame it as a debate about the economics of spice importation. Need to address military concerns? Present it as a conversation about the logistics of feeding armies in the field. Your court has adapted to your obsessions by translating governance into culinary terminology. The irony is that while you're neglecting imperial administration to focus on cooking, your elaborate meals have become a form of diplomatic soft power. Foreign dignitaries leave your court impressed by the sophistication of Bohemian cuisine, even if they're confused by the emperor's priorities. You've accidentally created a new form of international relations based on culinary excellence rather than military intimidation. The sun rises over your palace in Wallachia, and you are Vlad III, known to history as Vlad the Impaler, and your morning inspection tour begins not with reviewing your army or checking fortifications, but with walking through your forest of impaled bodies. Thousands of wooden stakes pierce the sky, each crowned with a human being in various stages of decomposition. This isn't a battlefield aftermath. This is your garden, your art installation, your statement about the proper relationship between ruler and ruled. Your breakfast is served on a table positioned to provide an optimal view of your impalement displays. Not out of sadism, necessarily, but because you've genuinely convinced yourself that the sight of previous victims serves as both entertainment and education. You discuss politics with visiting diplomats while pointing out particularly artistic examples of your work. That Turkish merchant who attempted to shortchange the royal treasury. His positioning demonstrates proper technique for maximum visual impact. The mathematics of impalement have become a specialized science in your court. Your executioners are trained professionals who understand the precise angle and depth required to ensure that victims survive for the optimal length of time. Too shallow, and death comes too quickly. Too deep, and vital organs are damaged, shortening the display period. You've turned judicial execution into an engineering problem, requiring technical expertise and artistic sensibility. Your palace staff have developed remarkable tolerance for horror. Servants discuss dinner preparations while walking past writhing, moaning human beings. Courtiers conduct business meetings with the sounds of dying people as background noise. Guards patrol your grounds, checking the security of your fortress and the structural integrity of your impalement stakes with equal professionalism. The psychological warfare aspect is undeniable. Ottoman armies have retreated from Wallachia after seeing your forests of impaled prisoners. Enemy commanders, hardened veterans of dozens of campaigns, have reportedly vomited at the sight of your artistic arrangements. You've created a defensive strategy based on making war with you so psychologically traumatic that enemies prefer to fight someone else, someone less creative. Your record keeping is meticulous. Each impalement is documented: the victim's crime, the date of execution, the specific impalement technique employed, and the duration of survival. You've created detailed statistics about the effectiveness of different methods, the deterrent effect on various types of crime, and the optimal spacing for maximum psychological impact. Scientific method applied to mass murder. The international diplomatic implications are fascinating. Foreign ambassadors must conduct negotiations, while surrounded by evidence of what happens to people who displease you. Treaty discussions take on a different tone when punctuated by the groans of impaled criminals. You've created a negotiating environment where the alternative to agreement is explicitly, graphically demonstrated all around the conference table. Religious justification comes easily. The Orthodox Church supports your methods as appropriate punishment for enemies of Christendom and violators of divine law. You've positioned yourself as God's instrument of justice, implementing biblical punishment with medieval efficiency. The impaled Turks aren't just military casualties, they're theological statements about the fate of infidels. Your servants have developed specialized skills that would be useless anywhere else in the world. Palace gardeners who know how to maintain grounds decorated with decomposing humans. Cooks who can prepare meals while ignoring the smell of rotting flesh. Entertainers who can perform music that masks the sounds of dying prisoners. You've created a court culture adapted to function normally in conditions that would drive most people insane. The economic impact is significant. Tourism, if you can call it that, brings visitors from across Europe who want to witness your infamous displays. Merchants, diplomats, and curiosity seekers contribute to the local economy while experiencing your unique form of hospitality. You've accidentally created one of history's first dark tourism destinations. People pay to see your atrocities, then go home and tell stories that enhance your fearsome reputation. Now you're Christian II of Denmark, and your morning routine involves detailed consultations with your physician about the state of your mental health, which everyone agrees is deteriorating rapidly. The royal doctor has given up trying to treat your condition and now focuses on managing the symptoms and protecting the kingdom from your increasingly erratic behavior. You're 29 years old, King of Denmark and Norway, and completely, certifiably insane. Your daily schedule is dictated by your delusions rather than state business. Today you believe you're a dog, so you're crawling around the palace on all fours, barking at courtiers and refusing to wear clothes. Tomorrow you might think you're Napoleon, commanding imaginary armies against invisible enemies. Next week could bring the conviction that you're made of butter and will melt if exposed to heat. Your mental illness has turned royal protocol into improvisational theatre. The court physicians have tried everything: bloodletting, herbal remedies, exorcisms, cold baths, hot baths, dietary restrictions, and physical restraints. Nothing works. Your condition continues to deteriorate, and your behavior becomes more unpredictable. During lucid moments, which are becoming increasingly rare, you're aware of your condition and terrified by your inability to control your own mind. Your wife, Caroline Mathield, sister of King George III of England, is having an affair with your personal physician, Johann Friedrich Struensee. Not because she's particularly immoral, but because you're incapable of fulfilling any of the normal duties of marriage. Struensee has essentially become the de facto ruler of Denmark, issuing royal decrees in your name, while you're convinced you're a different person, animal, or inanimate object. The strangest part is how the Danish government continues to function despite having a completely insane king. Your ministers have learned to work around your condition, timing important decisions for your brief periods of clarity, and managing crises without royal input. Denmark is being governed by committee, while you bark at mirrors and have conversations with furniture. Your delusions often involve elaborate conspiracy theories. You're convinced that various courtiers are plotting to poison you, replace you with an imposter, or steal your thoughts through magical means. These paranoid episodes result in random arrests, sudden dismissals of loyal servants, and frantic searches for evidence of plots that exist only in your diseased mind. The Danish nobility never knows whether they'll wake up as trusted advisors or accused traitors. International relations have become complicated by your mental state. Foreign ambassadors aren't sure whether they're negotiating with the King of Denmark or someone who thinks he's a farm animal. Diplomatic protocols break down when one party to the negotiation is convinced he's a chicken. European courts are sending reports back home describing meetings with a monarch who interrupts trade discussions to chase imaginary mice around the room. The succession question looms large. Your son Frederick is still a child, and your mental condition makes it unlikely you'll recover enough to rule effectively. The Danish nobility are quietly preparing for a regency while publicly maintaining the fiction that you're a competent monarch going through a temporary difficult period. The entire kingdom is tiptoeing around your madness while planning for your inevitable incapacitation. Your legacy will be that of the mad king whose illness inadvertently modernized Denmark. Struensee's reforms, implemented using your royal authority while you were mentally absent, will abolish serfdom, introduce freedom of the press, and establish religious tolerance. Your insanity becomes the accidental catalyst for Enlightenment policies that you would never have supported if you were sane. Dawn in 16th century Russia, and you are Ivan IV, Ivan the Terrible, and your morning prayer session involves asking God to forgive you for yesterday's murders while planning today's executions. Your personal confessor has given up trying to convince you that mass murder might be spiritually problematic. Instead, he focuses on providing absolution quickly and efficiently, like a spiritual fast food service for a homicidal monarch. Your oprichniki, your personal death squad, are already assembled in the courtyard, waiting for today's kill list. These aren't ordinary soldiers, they're fanatics who've sworn personal loyalty to you, and wear black uniforms decorated with a dog's head and a broom, symbolizing their mission to bite your enemies and sweep away treason. They look like medieval Halloween costumes, but they're absolutely deadly and completely devoted to implementing your increasingly paranoid vision of royal justice. The day's target is determined by your mood, recent dreams, or random suspicions. A boyar who looked at you wrong during yesterday's court session. A merchant whose prices seemed unreasonably high. A peasant who failed to prostrate himself quickly enough when your procession passed. Your criteria for treason have become so broad and arbitrary that basically anyone in Russia could be executed for virtually any reason at any time. Your torture chambers have been upgraded with the latest technology. Not just racks and thumbscrews, but innovative devices designed to maximize pain while prolonging consciousness. You've become personally involved in developing new interrogation techniques. experimenting with different methods of extracting confessions from people who probably have nothing to confess. The Tsar of Russia, moonlighting as a freelance torturer. The religious justification for your actions comes from your interpretation of divine kingship. You're God's appointed representative on earth, which means that anyone who opposes you is opposing God. Resistance to royal authority is heresy, criticism of royal policy is blasphemy, and insufficient enthusiasm for your leadership is apostasy. You've created a theological framework that makes disagreeing with you a mortal sin. Your son Ivan Ivanovich has been trying to moderate your behavior, serving as an intermediary between your increasingly extreme policies and the Russian people who have to live with the consequences. His efforts at reasonableness and moderation strike you as potential treason. During a particularly heated argument about your latest massacre, you grab an iron, pointed staff and strike him in the head. He dies from the wound, leaving you as the father who murdered his own heir in a fit of paranoid rage. The economic impact of your reign of terror is catastrophic. Nobles are fleeing the country, taking their wealth with them. Merchants are avoiding Russian markets because conducting business requires surviving contact with your government. Agricultural production is declining because peasants are afraid to prosper, knowing that success might attract dangerous royal attention. You're systematically destroying the economic foundation of your own empire. Your court has become a theatre of fear, where everyone is simultaneously performer and audience in an ongoing drama about survival under an insane tyrant. Courtiers have learned to demonstrate enthusiasm for your policies while secretly planning escape routes. Nobles compete to show loyalty while quietly moving their assets to safer countries. Your advisors provide counsel while mentally preparing for execution if their advice proves unpopular. The strangest aspect is your genuine religious devotion. Between torture sessions, you spend hours in prayer, genuinely seeking spiritual guidance and divine forgiveness. You've built churches, supported monasteries, and commissioned religious art while simultaneously implementing policies that would make Satan proud. The cognitive dissonance between your piety and your brutality suggests a level of mental illness that won't be properly understood for centuries. Morning arrives in ancient Rome, and you are Nero, emperor of the Roman Empire, and your daily routine begins not with reviewing reports from provincial governors or meeting with Senate leaders, but with vocal exercises and lyre practice. The most powerful man in the known world spends his mornings working on his vibrato and perfecting his stage presence. You've convinced yourself that your artistic talents are more important than your administrative responsibilities. Your palace has been converted into a combination recording studio and theatre, where you practice your performances for audiences of terrified courtiers who understand that insufficient applause could result in exile or death. Your singing voice is mediocre at best. Your lyre playing is adequate for an amateur, but your audiences respond, as if they're witnessing the birth of divine music. Fear is a powerful critic. The Great Fire of Rome wasn't your fault, probably, but your response to it reveals everything about your priorities. While the city burns, you're allegedly composing epic poetry about the destruction, treating one of history's great urban disasters as inspiration for your artistic work. Whether or not you actually fiddled while Rome burned, your reputation for caring more about your creative projects than your governing responsibilities is well established. Your architectural projects have moved beyond practical construction into the realm of artistic megalomania. The Domus Aurea, your golden house, isn't just a palace. It's a 300-acre complex featuring artificial lakes, rotating dining rooms, and a 120-foot tall bronze statue of yourself. You've essentially turned downtown Rome into your personal art installation, displacing thousands of people to create a monument to your aesthetic vision. The theatrical performances are mandatory attendance events for the Roman elite. Senators, generals, and provincial governors must sit through your concerts, opera performances, and dramatic recitations, applauding enthusiastically while privately calculating the cost of fleeing to their country estates. You've turned cultural events into loyalty tests, where insufficient appreciation for your artistic talents becomes evidence of political disloyalty. Your mother Agrippina tried to manage your artistic obsessions by encouraging your interest in governance, but you had her murdered because she was interfering with your creative development. Matricide is extreme even by Roman imperial standards, but you justified it as necessary for your artistic freedom. Can't focus on your music with your mother constantly nagging about boring administrative duties. The Olympic Games have been redesigned around your participation. You compete in events you're guaranteed to win, not through athletic excellence, but through the simple fact that no one dares defeat the emperor. Your chariot crashes during the race, but you're declared the winner anyway. You receive medals for contests you didn't finish and recognition for achievements that exist only in the imagination of your terrified officials. Your marriage to Poppaea Sabina ended when you kicked her to death during pregnancy, allegedly because she complained about you spending too much time at the theatre. Domestic violence motivated by artistic dedication represents a new low in imperial family relations. You later married a male slave named Sporus, whom you had castrated and dressed as your dead wife, because apparently normal relationships interfere with your creative process. The Senate tolerates your artistic pretensions, because the alternative is civil war, but their patience is wearing thin. Whispers of rebellion are circulating among the military commanders who understand that an empire can't be governed by someone who thinks artistic performance is more important than political administration. Your reign will end with suicide, but right now, you're more concerned with tomorrow's concert than tonight's conspiracy meetings. The morning sun illuminates medieval England, and you are Ratatouille, and your day begins with a detailed consultation about your appearance. Not your health, your appearance. Your clothes, your jewellery, your hair, your makeup. Yes, makeup. You've introduced cosmetics to the English court, scandalising the nobility and confusing the common people who expect their king to look like a warrior, not a fashion model. Your wardrobe expenses exceed the military budget. Silk imported from China, furs from Russia, jewels from India, and perfumes from Arabia. You own more shoes than most people own possessions, and your clothing collection requires its own staff, its own storage facilities, and its own transportation system when the court moves between residences. The King of England has become a medieval fashion influencer. The handkerchief, your personal invention, has revolutionized court etiquette. Before your reign, people wiped their noses on their sleeves, which you find aesthetically offensive. So you've introduced small squares of fine linen for nasal maintenance, creating an entire new category of luxury goods. Future historians will remember you as the king who gave humanity the handkerchief, which might be the most useful thing any English monarch ever contributed to civilization. Your court ceremonies have become elaborate theatrical productions where costumes are more important than content. State functions are planned like fashion shows, with careful attention to color coordination, fabric selection, and accessory matching. Foreign ambassadors spend more time describing your outfits than your policies in their diplomatic reports. International relations conducted through fashion statements. The nobility are struggling to keep up with your style innovations. Courtiers are bankrupting themselves, trying to maintain wardrobes that complement your aesthetic vision. The English aristocracy, traditionally focused on military prowess and land management, are now obsessing over fabric quality and jewelry design. You've transformed medieval political culture into a competition for sartorial supremacy. Your personal hygiene standards are revolutionary for the 14th century. Daily baths, teeth cleaning, hair washing, and grooming routines that would be considered normal in modern times but are shocking in medieval England. You've imported bathing techniques from the Byzantine Empire and hygiene practices from the Islamic world. The cleanest king in English history, ruling over subjects who consider annual washing excessive. The artistic patronage extends beyond personal appearance to cultural innovation. You've commissioned poets, musicians, painters, and craftsmen to create works that reflect your aesthetic vision. The court has become a centre for artistic experimentation and cultural development, attracting creative talent from across Europe. Your vanity is accidentally fostering a cultural renaissance. Your political instincts are terrible, but your aesthetic sense is flawless. While you're focused on coordinating your jewelry with your robes, your nobles are plotting rebellion. The peasants revolt. Conflicts with parliament and tensions with the aristocracy are all secondary concerns compared to your morning fashion decisions. You're facing the most serious political crisis in English royal history while obsessing over your appearance. The tragedy is that your innovations in personal hygiene, fashion, and court culture represent genuine improvements in civilized living, but your political incompetence will overshadow your cultural contributions. History will remember you as the vain king who lost his throne, not as the monarch who introduced basic concepts of personal cleanliness and aesthetic sophistication to medieval England. Dawn breaks over your palace in Mysore, and you are Tipu Sultan, the tiger of Mysore, and your morning begins with feeding your actual tigers. Not metaphorical tigers, real ones. You keep dozens of Bengal tigers as pets, symbols, and occasionally as creative execution devices. Your throne room features a mechanical tiger attacking a European soldier, complete with sound effects and moving parts. Subtlety has never been your strong suit. Your obsession with tiger symbolism extends to every aspect of your reign. Your soldiers wear tiger-striped uniforms, your cannons are decorated with tiger motifs. Your personal weapons feature tiger designs, and your palace walls are covered with tiger artwork. You've essentially turned yourself into a human tiger brand, complete with consistent imagery and thematic coherence that would impress modern marketing executives. The mechanical tigers throughout your palace aren't just decoration, they're functional art pieces that demonstrate your commitment to both technological innovation and psychological warfare. European visitors are unnerved by rooms filled with clockwork tigers that roar, move their heads, and occasionally reveal hidden compartments containing diplomatic messages or secret weapons. Your palace is part royal residence, part horror house, part engineering marvel. Your military strategies incorporate tiger tactics with literal precision. Fast attacks, strategic retreats, territorial defense, and the use of terrain advantages that mirror actual tiger hunting behavior. You've studied tiger behavior patterns and applied them to battlefield tactics, creating a unique form of biomimetic warfare that confuses European military commanders trained in conventional combat techniques. The Tiger Throne, your masterpiece, is a functional seat of government that doubles as an artistic statement about the nature of your power. Carved from a single piece of wood and decorated with gold, jewels, and mechanical components, it's designed to make everyone who approaches feel like prey in the presence of a predator. Diplomatic negotiations take on a different tone when conducted with a mechanical tiger growling in the background. Your correspondence is conducted on paper decorated with tiger watermarks, sealed with tiger-shaped wax stamps, and delivered by messengers wearing tiger-striped clothing. Even your diplomatic communications reinforce your personal brand. Foreign governments receive treaties and trade agreements that look like they were written by someone who thinks he's actually a large cat. The economic implications of your tiger obsession are significant. Maintaining dozens of live tigers requires enormous resources for food, care, and security. The mechanical tigers require skilled craftsmen, expensive materials, and constant maintenance. Your tiger-themed military uniforms and equipment cost significantly more than standard gear. You're essentially spending a substantial portion of the royal treasury on elaborate tiger cosplay. Your subjects have adapted to their ruler's feline fixation. Local artisans specialize in tiger-themed crafts, architects incorporate tiger motifs into building designs, and even religious ceremonies include references to your tiger identity. The entire kingdom has been transformed into a tiger-themed state, where everything from currency to court ceremonies reflects your obsession. The psychological effect on enemies is undeniable. British forces report that facing Tipu's tiger-striped armies creates a unique form of battlefield anxiety. The combination of actual military competence and bizarre thematic consistency creates an opponent that's both dangerous and deeply unsettling. You've turned personal obsession into strategic advantage. Your final battle will be fought defending your tiger-decorated fortress, surrounded by tiger-themed artwork, while wearing tiger-striped armor and wielding tiger-designed weapons. When the British finally defeat you, they'll discover a palace filled with thousands of tiger-related objects, confirming that your dedication to the theme was absolutely genuine. Death before aesthetic compromise. The morning light filters through the windows of Neuschwanstein Castle, and you are Ludwig II of Bavaria, the Mad King, and your day begins with architectural consultations about castles that will bankrupt your kingdom. but will photograph beautifully for tourist postcards a century after your death. Your primary concern isn't governance, diplomacy, or economic policy. It's whether the Gothic Revival towers properly capture the romantic medieval aesthetic you're trying to recreate in the 19th century. Your castle building obsession has moved beyond royal residence construction into the realm of elaborate historical cosplay. Neuschwanstein isn't just a home. It's a three-dimensional fantasy novel where you can live as a medieval king, complete with throne rooms that look like theatre sets, bedrooms decorated like fairy tale illustrations, and dining halls designed for banquets that will never happen because you prefer eating alone in your private apartments. The financial cost of your architectural fantasies is destroying Bavaria's treasury. Each castle project costs more than most countries' annual budgets, and you keep starting new ones before finishing the old ones. Your finance ministers submit increasingly desperate reports about national bankruptcy, while you review blueprints for additional towers, elaborate frescoes, and mechanical contraptions that serve no practical purpose beyond aesthetic satisfaction. Your relationship with Richard Wagner has transformed royal patronage into personal obsession. You don't just support his musical compositions, you've built private theatres for performances attended only by yourself. Imagine sitting alone in an elaborate opera house, watching full productions of Wagner's Ring Cycle, performed by professional orchestras and singers for an audience of one. The most expensive private concerts in human history. The castle interiors are designed around operatic themes rather than residential functionality. Your bedroom is decorated with scenes from Tristan and Isolde. Your study features Tannhäuser motifs, and your dining room celebrates Lohengrin. You've essentially turned your living spaces into stage sets where you can inhabit the romantic medieval world that exists only in Wagner's imagination and your architectural fantasies. Your avoidance of court ceremonies and state functions has reached pathological levels. You schedule meetings for the middle of the night, conduct business through written correspondence to avoid face-to-face contact, and spend months at a time in remote castles where no one can bother you with mundane concerns like governmental administration. The King of Bavaria, practicing social distancing decades before it becomes a public health strategy. The servant staff at your various castles have learned to accommodate your eccentric lifestyle. Meals prepared for one person but served with full formal protocol. Elaborate evening entertainments performed for empty rooms because you've decided to dine in your private quarters instead. Staff maintaining gardens, libraries, and reception halls that no one except you will ever see. Your subjects rarely see you, which makes you simultaneously mysterious and irrelevant to their daily lives. Bavaria functions under bureaucratic administration while you're occupied with turret placement and fresco selection. The kingdom has essentially learned to govern itself while you play medieval dress up in increasingly expensive architectural playhouses. The irony is that your fairy tale castles will become Bavaria's greatest tourist attractions, generating more economic value as historical curiosities than they ever cost to construct. Your financial irresponsibility becomes a long-term economic investment that pays dividends for centuries. The Mad King's folly transforms into national treasure, proving that sometimes insanity is just misunderstood genius with better marketing.